Vitali Kravtsov has requested a trade from the New York Rangers, and no, this is not a rerun of Locked On New York Rangers, but we're going to be discussing all the latest of the ongoing and seemingly never-ending Vitali Kravtsov saga, how likely it is that he'll be traded, and why there is plenty of blame to go around as it pertains to how we've gotten to this point between Vitali Kravtsov and the New York Rangers. Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 771 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And yes, once again, Vitali Kravtsov has requested a trade from the New York Rangers. This comes on the heels of his latest healthy scratching, which occurred in the Rangers' most recent game, a win against the Carolina Hurricanes. Kravtsov had played the game before that one against the Kraken, which was, of course, the first game coming out of the All-Star break. He did so after being a healthy scratch in 4 consecutive games. Gerard Gallant mentioning that he wanted to give the kid an opportunity. I thought Kravtsov played well enough against the Kraken. I mean, he didn't do anything earth-shattering, but I thought for sure, he did enough to stay in the lineup, and especially given the fact that, the Rangers won that game handily, I figured they wouldn't touch the lineup and they would just keep rolling with the same lineup going forward. But, of course, Kravtsov was scratched against the Canes in favor of Jake Leschyshyn, so the trade request comes in, pretty much right after that, and there is a lot to unpack here. First of all, as far as me personally and where I'm at with this whole situation, I'm ready for a trade of Vitali Kravtsov to happen. I've kind of been ready for it. As we've talked about on here, I just can't see him being that big of a part of the Rangers' long-term future when you've got so many young players that need new contracts. Going into this offseason, you've got Hedl, you've got Lafreniere, you've got K'Andre Miller. Then in some seasons to come, some very important players as well. Braden Schneider, chief among them, also Capo Caco. So it's at the point where, Kravtsov is fallen so far out of favor with this team and is slipped so far down the pecking order that I just don't see what his long-term future is. And honestly, we're getting to the point where I'm not too sure what his short-term future is with this team either. And, I know there are going to be people out there, you go on social media, there are, certain fans of the Rangers and fans of Vitali Kravtsov that will defend him to no end. And, he doesn't get enough ice time, or the Rangers haven't developed him properly enough, or the Rangers need to get better in general at developing their forwards. All those things are true to some extent. But for all the Kravtsov supporters and the people that just want to see this guy plugged into a top 6 role and just left there and, take his lumps and go into the playoffs with Vitali Kravtsov playing in a top 6 role for the New York Rangers, the truth is he just hasn't really been all that good for this team. Not every player that you draft, even players that you draft high, are going to turn into pillars of the franchise, building blocks for the franchise, superstar players. It's not going to happen with every single player. Not every player who is 23 or younger is going to be a superstar for this team and end up staying here for 15 years. It's just not going to happen. We've talked about that in the past. There's always difficult decisions to make when it comes to who you hang on to, who you build around, and who, you eventually either trade or let walk or whatever the case might be. But, for Kravtsov at this point, between this season and between what he did 2 years ago with the New York Rangers, he has now played in 48 career NHL games, 5 goals, 5 assists, so he's got 10 points in 48 games. He is an even plus-minus, average 11:50 of ice time, 11 minutes and 50 seconds, 14 block shots, and 18 hits. So these are not the numbers that are the work of a superstar player. And I understand, yes, there's times where I think they could use him a little bit better. They give him a little bit more of an opportunity. But, he's had his chances as well, because when Kravtsov has played this season, and he's played in 28 games this year, he played 20 games 2 years ago, a lot of that has occurred on the Artemi Panarin line. There's been a lot of times this season where he's in the lineup and he's out there with Panarin and usually Trocheck on that second line there. Now, I realize there are times where he tends to get demoted as the game progresses, probably a little bit more than he should. And there's times where, situational hockey, it'll be late in the game, the Rangers will be up by a goal, and they'll want, Goodrow in that spot, or they'll want VZ in that spot, defensively responsible forward, and that's fine. So I get that, certain fans say, well, you got to leave him there for the whole game. There's times where I just don't think that's possible. And another point that I'll make here, all the time that he spent with Artemi Panarin on the ice, we have seen everybody, pretty much everybody, that's been Panarin's line mate since Panarin got here, right up to current day here, guys who are established players in this league, all the way to guys that can barely get into the lineup. Everybody that's played with Artemi Panarin on that second line has gotten what I refer to as the Panarin bump. You can look at somebody like Ryan Strome putting up career numbers. Vincent Trocheck, him and Panarin are figuring it out this year for sure. Guys like Jesper Fast in the past, guys like, Colin Blackwell, Barclay Goodrow has put up some points when he's played with Panarin. The list goes on and on here. That's just a couple off the top of my head. Everybody seems to get an uptick in production except for Vitali Kravtsov. And again, we can talk about, usage and, well, he doesn't get to finish the game there. Bottom line, he's had some chances with Artemi Panarin this season, and Panarin seems to have a way of making just about everybody better, and he has not really been able to do that with Vitali Kravtsov, at least to this point. A couple of moments here and there, but, the points have not added up for Kravtsov. And Kravtsov, not a good enough defensive player for it to be worth it to have him in a prominent role on this team if he's not producing some offense. Kravtsov's in there for offense. He's not in there to kill penalties, bone-jarring hits, anything along those lines. So if he's not creating offense, then he's not really adding a lot of value to your team. And for everybody that feels sorry for Kravtsov. And I guess I do too, to at least some extent, because, it just hasn't worked out for him here. He's obviously had some bad luck with some injuries earlier this season. So, I get it to an extent. But please remember that Kravtsov has essentially quit on this team twice. And that's not even including this most recent trade request, because at least right now, he's still at practice. But he didn't want to play in the minors anymore. He was on the Hartford Wolfpack. He used his opt-out clause to go back, play in the KHL, left the team. He didn't want to start last season in the minors. He was told after training camp that he had not made the team and that he would be starting with the Hartford Wolfpack. He immediately bails once again, goes back to the KHL. And what's so crazy about that situation to me is the Rangers had an injury, a game or two into that season. He very likely would have been almost immediately recalled to the New York Rangers, but by then it was too late. He had left. And Gerard Gallant personally called Vitali Kravtsov to try to get him to come back and change his mind, talk him back into being part of this Ranger organization. And Kravtsov, didn't take the bait, whatever you want to call it. He didn't want to come back to the Rangers. He was content being over there in the KHL. So again, for everybody that so viciously, or whatever the word is, defends Vitali Kravtsov, please keep in mind, he has quit on the team twice. That's not really up for debate. That's not really, any kind of shades of gray or anything like that. It's a very black and white situation. He twice has left the Ranger organization high and dry. Now, I will acknowledge that the Rangers could have handled things better on their end. We're going to have more on that in just a second, because I am going to, make a couple of points in Kravtsov's favor, as far as what the Rangers could have done to make things better for him, give him more of a chance, and avoid the situation that we currently find ourselves in here. But, another point that I want to make here is, has anyone this season, the people that defend Kravtsov so much, has anyone really seen greatness? Has anyone really seen a guy that, oh yeah, I can see why the Rangers drafted him, the number 9 overall pick? I really haven't. There's tiny little flashes here and there. I think he's a very good puck handler. The problem there, I always compliment his puck handling ability. One of the issues there right now, though, is I feel like other teams, it's fairly easy for them to knock him off of the puck. So, yeah, Kravtsov has that skill, and that's something that's, part of his repertoire. But, it kind of goes to waste if it's easy to separate you from the puck. You look at Capo Caco, and you look at his puck handling skills and how he's able to, shield the puck, maintain possession for pretty much as long as he wants. Kravtsov's not able to do things like that. And maybe that'll come in time when Kravtsov, adds a little muscle, becomes a little bit stronger, develops a little bit more. That's all possible. But for the time being, yeah, great puck handler, but he can't hang onto the puck for that long. Guys are able to separate him from it with, relative ease. So again, little flashes here and there, but I just have not seen what I would call greatness from Vitali Kravtsov. You wouldn't watch him playing in these hockey games and think like, oh yeah, first round pick, top 10 overall pick. I wouldn't, at least. Maybe other people are seeing other things. I personally have not seen that. One aspect, and I mentioned this briefly just a second ago, that makes this situation, I guess, a little bit better than the last 2 times when Kravtsov has walked out on the Rangers, is the very simple fact that he is at least still with the team. He practiced with them on Monday, and it's Tuesday morning as I'm recording this. I would imagine there'd be a practice or some sort of team activity today. So he's at least still there, but it has to be something of an awkward situation. If there were teammates of Kravtsov's who maybe have not really gotten around the fact that, once again, he walked down the team twice. This situation is not going to help anything because Kravtsov has publicly requested a trade. So it has to be a little bit weird, a little bit awkward. He's still with the team, still practicing and everything. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's Wednesday and Kravtsov is still a member of the Rangers and they put him back out there for another opportunity. I don't see that happening, especially after the trade request, but I suppose stranger things have happened, and it wouldn't be the first time that we've been surprised by a New York Ranger lineup decision. But, hopefully his teammates aren't taking it too personally. I would hope that maybe they can at least see the business side of the situation a little bit, where Kravtsov wants a fresh start and they can appreciate that a little bit. But hopefully it's just not too awkward or too strange or too uncomfortable of a situation right now. I mean, the Rangers have good vibes right now. The Tarasenko trade, the winning streak, you don't want anything to kind of derail that. But for what it's worth, these were the line combinations. Might as well just throw this out there on practice at Monday. It was pretty much the way that they ended this most recent game. You had Kreider, Zibanejad, Tarasenko left to right. Second line, then Panarin, Trocheck, Vesey. The third line was the kid line, Lafreniere, Hedl, and Kakko. And the fourth line, Lecision, Goodrow, Gauthier, and Kravtsov. My understanding is Kravtsov was mixing in as the 13th forward. So again, at least he is still there. But yeah, just kind of a strange situation, and one that hopefully we'll get some resolution to at some point sooner rather than later. But I think it's entirely possible at this point that Kravtsov has played his final game as a New York Ranger. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I do want to, at least acknowledge the fact that the Rangers could have handled this situation a little bit better, and that, Kravtsov, even though he hasn't handled things great, the Rangers haven't always treated him like, that he's somebody that they believe in. For somebody that they took number 9 overall, I think at times their treatment of him has left at least something to be desired, and I'll at least acknowledge some of the reasons why I can understand why Kravtsov at this point looking for a fresh start and looking for a trade. And we're going to do all that good stuff in just a second. But first, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, and we just want to thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. And as I mentioned just a second ago, I do not believe the Rangers are blameless in this situation. It's pretty obvious that Chris Drury was never a fan of that Vitali Kravtsov pick. At the time, it was not his decision to make. Of course, back then, Jeff Gorton was the general manager. But Drury has made that abundantly clear through a couple of different run-ins with Vitali Kravtsov. There was a report that Drury publicly admonished Vitali Kravtsov, told him that he had quit on the team. That was back in 2019. There was apparently another incident where Drury called out Kravtsov for not working hard enough, did that in full view of Kravtsov's teammates. That apparently happened during, the bubble playoffs when the Rangers were briefly in the playoffs back in 2020, and Kravtsov didn't play in any of those games, but was invited to be there at least. So, Drury overall, I think, has done a really nice job as the Ranger GM. As I've said in the past, more hits than misses, but his handling of Vitali Kravtsov has certainly left something to be desired at times and will not go down as one of his bigger accomplishments. I also think, and we talked about this a second ago too, I also think it was really foolish, short-sighted, call it whatever you want to call it, but just not the right thing for the Rangers to do at the start of last season when they did not have Vitali Kravtsov on the opening night roster and they sent him down to the minors. You've had some issues with this guy in the past, and it was so obvious that the Rangers were going to call him up in relatively short order that I don't understand why he just wasn't on the NHL roster to begin with, because you're playing with fire here. And look, I understand that you can't just cater to a player because, well, he might throw a fit and leave the team. I get that, but the Rangers, they had every intention of him joining the NHL team once again in relatively short order. And what's crazy, again, is that 2 games into that season, very, very likely that Vitali Kravtsov would have been recalled. Somebody got injured. I don't remember who it was. It was kind of, a bottom 6 forward, but very, very likely that Kravtsov would have been called right back up. And so another example here of nobody really handling anything very well. The Rangers, again, just not realizing that could happen. If we send this guy down, we've had some issues with him before. It's possible he could leave, and that's exactly what happened. For them to not see that, when he was going to be called back up very soon anyway. Definitely a little bit of a misstep by the Rangers. And Kravtsov, once again, I don't think it would have killed him to play 1 or 2 games with the Hartford Wolfpack and then eventually get called back up to the Rangers and, show what he can do at the NHL level. But I will say, and I talked about this a second ago too, I'll at least acknowledge some of the reasons why I can understand why Kravtsov wants out. First and foremost, he's been healthy scratched in some situations in this season where I don't think he's really deserved it. A couple of different times it's come after a win and a good win and a win in which Kravtsov has played fairly well. Not that he's like getting a hat trick every night, of course, but, played well enough and shown enough that I think he should be back out there. And I think this latest, back-to-back situation where Rangers beat the Kraken handily and Kravtsov plays and does fairly well. And then, the next night he's scratched for Jake Leschyshyn of all people, who isn't exactly lighting up the NHL, either with the Knights or now with the Rangers. So I can understand the frustration, and I'm sure Kravtsov probably feels like, listen, I can't get anything going here because I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. I'm constantly walking on eggshells. If I make one mistake, I'm going to be benched. If I make one mistake, I'm going to drop from the second line to the fourth line. If I make one mistake, I'm going to be healthy scratch for the next 4 games. So I can understand Kravtsov, feeling that way, that he's kind of walking on eggshells right now and just, not having a chance to really put anything together. I'm sure he would like the opportunity to feel like he has at least some job security, some lineup security, and, play an entire game on the same line or, play back-to-back games or play 3 straight games if you really want to get crazy. So I can understand all those things from Kravtsov's end there. And he might feel the same way that I think a lot of us feel, that this just is not working between himself and the New York Rangers. It's basically been one thing after another ever since he's been drafted. And again, plenty of blame to go around for everyone, but let's all be real here. And I've talked about this all season whenever it comes to Kravtsov. Does anyone think that Vitali Kravtsov is a lifelong Ranger? I haven't felt that way since probably the first time that he walked out on the team, which at this point was 4 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about. But that's where we're at here. So I'm sure, the Rangers, from their point of view, it's probably best if they can just get whatever they can get for him in a trade. Don't give him away, but get something that you feel good enough about, and then just kind of wash your hands of the situation. And for Kravtsov, I'm sure he wants a fresh start with a different team. And hey, I don't really, he's not my favorite Ranger due to the walkouts on the team a couple of times, but I wouldn't wish any ill will on him. If the Rangers are able to trade him to a Western Conference team, then I hope he gets the fresh start that he wants, and I hope he develops into a solid NHL player. So we'll see if all those things come to fruition. I think it's getting likelier and likelier that Kravtsov will be dealt before the trade deadline. Something else that I'll say as well in Kravtsov's defense here, in his favor, so to speak, I do think he's worked hard this year, and that's something that Drury called him out for once again publicly, a few years ago. I think he's worked hard. I think he's also been a better teammate this year. This recent trade request notwithstanding. And honestly, the trade request in and of itself does not make him a bad teammate. I just kind of wish, I'm kind of old school. I think you just do what your coach says and, you wait for your number to be called and you do everything you can to help your team rather than looking for the exit. But again, as I said a minute ago, I can at least understand, why he wants out. But as far as a couple examples of him working hard and being a better teammate, I've talked about this before too, but this happened quite a bit this season, during training camp and even into the regular season during practice. He stays after practice with Artemi Panarin, and the two of them work on one-timers. Panarin just feeds him the puck over and over again and tries to set up, Kravtsov and, set him up for some one-timers, and the two of them converse quite a bit after practice. There was also a play this year where selfless kind of blue-collar play for Vitali Kravtsov. That's not really his MO, but there was a play where the puck was loose in the corner in the offensive zone, and Kravtsov went flying after it, forechecking like a madman, trying to get there first, and just a nasty collision, got his head driven into the boards, had to leave that game. Kravtsov couldn't catch a break early in the season as it pertained to injuries, and just one example there, but, doing everything he can, hustling, going to the dirty part, one of the dirty parts of the rink, and trying to get to the puck and keep the play alive for the Rangers. And unfortunately, he got injured for his troubles. But it was good to see him at least try to do some blue-collar work there and do what he could to basically just keep the play alive in the offensive zone. And like I said, unfortunately, he got injured in so doing. The other thing I've noticed, too, and again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but we see the Rangers a good amount. We see them during the games. We see them during practices. We see them, be interviewed and things like that. It seems like he's been a little bit friendlier with his teammates this year. We talked about Panarin. Obviously, Panarin's taken him under his wing a little bit. But just watching him interact with teammates, there have been a couple different examples of that where it seems like, he's at least got some friends in that locker room, and some of the guys have embraced him. There was one game where the Rangers won. It was after the game, and he was kind of joking around with K'Andre Miller a little bit. So baby steps, but, I do think overall he's worked harder this year and has been overall a better teammate. And hopefully, that bodes well for his trade value, where other GMs around this league aren't going to see him as like a selfish, me-first kind of player, which up until this season, I think you can make the case that kind of is what he was because, again, of the walkouts. The walkouts just never sat right with me, even if you can certainly understand some of Kravtsov's frustrations. And quote from Gallant here, because he was asked about, Kravtsov obviously requesting the trade. This is what he had to say about it. It's not easy. He's a top 9 player, and right now he's not in our top 9. He's going to be a fourth-line player, or he's not going to be a fourth-line player. He doesn't play in that role for our team. We like him. I like him. He's a good kid. He's got to continue to work hard when the chance is available. Take advantage of it. You don't give anything to anybody. You got to make them earn it. And I agree in theory with Gallant's concept here that everybody has to earn everything. I just felt like, as I mentioned, that from the Kraken game to the Canes game, he earned at least another game being in the lineup, especially when Jake Leschyshyn is the guy replacing him. But that's just me. Again, this is a very polarizing topic as it pertains to Ranger fans, so I'm doing my best to be balanced here and kind of come to a reasonable conclusion and try to see both sides of it. Again, I think to me it's probably time for both sides to move on here and for Kravtsov to be traded. But we're going to kind of wrap everything up, conclude everything. I'm going to have some closing thoughts in just a second here, so definitely stick around for that. But first, we got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking AG1 because I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great, and I wanted to see what all the hype was about. Now I've been on it for about 9 months, and I love it. It doesn't taste like it's super healthy. It has kind of a mild tropical taste that I actually look forward to each morning. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It is lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it is cheaper than your cold brew habit. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, so we'll go ahead, keep everything rolling right along here. I want to look at this as practically as I possibly can to kind of conclude today's episode and, possibly talk about Vitali Kravtsov for the last time here on Locked On New York Rangers, at least in this amount of, depth, because, again, I feel like a trade could be happening sooner rather than later, and honestly, I kind of want to wrap up this episode and get it published before Drury strikes with a trade here and Kravtsov is actually on the move. But, yeah, I mean, again, you look at this entire situation. We pretty much knew, once again, that Kravtsov did not factor into the Ranger long-term plans because they have so many young players that they need to re-sign, and, I've talked about that as well. It doesn't really look like he factors into their short-term plans either. When we're living in a world where Kravtsov can be a scratch in favor of, Sammy Blais, who basically just got dumped by the Rangers. I mean, that was a salary dump and a way to open up a roster spot. The Blues, maybe they had some interest in Sammy Blais because he'd played there before and he'd won a Stanley Cup there before, but the Blues were after draft picks, and I would assume also Hunter Skinner. So Sammy Blais, who couldn't really get anything going with the Rangers, he was in the lineup over Kravtsov at times. Ryan Carpenter, and I realize he's a center, Kravtsov's a winger, but Ryan Carpenter was in the lineup over Kravtsov at times. Dryden Hunt, who the Rangers ended up waiving, hardworking player, but practically zero upside to speak of. Johnny Brodzinski, somebody who spent the majority of his career in the AHL. Again, hardworking player, brings some speed to the table, but these are all guys that are getting playing time, getting more playing time, at least at certain points of this season, than Vitali Kravtsov. And of course, the latest example, Jake Leschyshyn, who I have seen next to nothing from. And I honestly, as a quick aside here, if the Rangers don't make any more moves, if they don't end up bringing in a fourth-line player, which I think they will, but just in case they don't, I think at a certain point, you bring Johnny Brodzinski back up and Jake Leschyshyn is sent down or placed on waivers or whatever that might entail. I think Brodzinski brings a little bit more to the table than Jake Leschyshyn does. But that's a different topic for a different day. We want to keep everything on Vitali Kravtsov here. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for the time being. But something else, another aspect of this whole thing, Vitali Kravtsov, and again, I think this is a little bit of a misstep for Kravtsov, even for selfish reasons, the fact that he made his trade request public. Because what this does now is it causes the Rangers, it causes Drury and, the Ranger front office to lose at least some leverage when it comes to Kravtsov. I think most general managers around the league can probably figure out the fact that, it's what we've been talking about here, that Kravtsov is not going to be a Ranger for life, that Chris Drury was never really a fan of that selection, and that Gallant doesn't want to play him on most nights, it seems like, or at least on a good amount of the nights. So, yeah, I mean, for starters, you're already working from a situation where you don't have a ton of leverage if you're Chris Drury and the Ranger front office. But now that Kravtsov has made it public that he wants out, now you have even less leverage. And look, Drury's under no obligation to trade him. I mean, the request is nice and everything, but Drury, I don't think he's just going to give Kravtsov away for like a 5th-round pick. This is somebody that was taken number 9 overall by the New York Rangers. So if Drury doesn't get what he wants between now and the trade deadline, it's certainly at least feasible that, he could hang on to him, into the summer, into the offseason. I think at that point, it pretty much becomes inevitable that Kravtsov would have to be traded because he would need a new contract. He is a pending restricted free agent. So, yeah, I mean, it's a situation where Kravtsov has actually hurt himself by making his trade request public. It'd be better to just do this behind closed doors because, again, now teams are going to think they can get Kravtsov for pennies on the dollar, whereas Drury doesn't want to do that. If Kravtsov had kept this quiet, then it'd probably be a little bit easier for Drury to get something of value back in return for Kravtsov. So we'll see what happens here. There's a bunch of twists and turns yet to come in this saga, or that's what it feels like at the very least. As far as what the Rangers can get for him, I touched on this briefly in a recent episode as well because we were talking about the whole storyline of Kravtsov being a healthy scratch in the most recent game against the Hurricanes. As I mentioned, if the Rangers can get a 2nd-round draft pick straight up for Vitali Kravtsov, I'm going to do it. I think at a certain point here, you got to realize that this just is not going to work out, that the Rangers and Kravtsov are heading for a divorce, and that it's time to move on. And if you can get something as valuable as a 2nd-round draft pick and just wash your hands of the entire situation, then I think you probably got to do it. And something about that 2nd-round pick that the Rangers bring in, it would give the Rangers a little bit more ammo if there's another trade that they're looking to make. If they still want to go big game hunting and still try to bring in a Patrick Kane, that would entail a whole lot of things to happen. But, you now have another 2nd-round draft pick at your disposal, or you could just keep the 2nd-round draft pick and use it in next year's draft. If the Rangers were to get a 2nd-rounder for Kravtsov, then they would have 1 first-rounder and 2 second-rounders going into next season, which is obviously, that's a good amount for the first 2 rounds there, and you can do some damage and get some valuable players for yourself. And I mentioned this the other day as well. There might be some that think that a 2nd-rounder is too high for Vitali Kravtsov, that nobody's going to give that much because Kravtsov hasn't shown enough, and of course, all the off-the-ice issues. The counterpoint that I'll make to that, all it takes is one team. There's 31 other teams in this league. Kravtsov doesn't have a no-move clause of any kind. The Rangers can trade him anywhere they want. So all it takes is one team to offer that 2nd-round draft pick. Will somebody do it? I'm not sure. Of course, you also have to factor in the idea that Drury probably would not want to trade Kravtsov within the Metro Division and preferably would not want to trade him to an Eastern Conference team of any kind. So if Drury is committed to not trading Kravtsov within the division, then that obviously, limits him a little bit, but, second round draft pick, I think it's at least possible. And Drury's been knocking it out of the park with some of these trades that he's made the past couple of years. So I certainly would not rule that out, the possibility of Kravtsov fetching the Rangers a second round draft pick. Bottom line, to kind of just wrap this whole thing up, it's time for this to happen. And I do think it'll happen before the deadline. We did that episode, top 5 most likely Rangers to be traded away from the team between now and the deadline. And I had Vitali Kravtsov at number 1, and that was before he was healthy scratched again, and it was before he did his trade request. I just feel like it might be imminent. And again, I don't see Drury giving him away, but, you look at everything that's happened. Kravtsov has walked out on the team twice, and now he's requested a trade. Gallant does not seem to be a big fan of Kravtsov's game. We know Chris Drury is not a fan of Vitali Kravtsov. We've got this close-knit Ranger locker room where everybody seems to be pretty tight and pretty close, and, for the most part, everybody pulling in the same direction. Kravtsov clearly wants out, so okay, fine. I'm just looking at this very practically, very reasonably. Let's just make this happen, and everybody can move on with their lives. We as Ranger fans can all move on. Drury can finally, trade this player that clearly he does not want, and Kravtsov can have a fresh start in a new place and hopefully do well for himself. I could see like a team that's kind of down and out and looking to maybe buy low on somebody that was picked in the top 10, making a move like this. I don't see a contending team in the West being interested, but if you're a team that's down and out like the Blackhawks, the Coyotes, somebody like that, then I can see where Vitali Kravtsov would, be somewhat attractive, especially if you think you can get him for less than you should be able to get him for. But we'll see. Bottom line, very, very practically looking at this, I'm just ready for this to happen. I'm ready for the split to happen. I'm ready for everybody to move on with their lives and for this trade to go down, and for all of us Ranger fans to focus on the Rangers that actually want to be here, because Kravtsov wants out, and again, I can understand it to a certain extent, but everybody else in that Ranger locker room, like I said, they're all pulling in the same direction and have designs on hopefully winning a Stanley Cup this season. So I think the sooner this happens, the better. And only the Rangers, only the Rangers can win 5 consecutive games, get everybody all excited with the Tarasenko trade, playing great hockey. They've scored 12 goals in their last 2 games against 2 quality opponents, 2 then first-place teams, and still have some drama, at least some drama lingering around the team. And, of course, that comes in the form of Kravtsov requesting the trade and, kind of the suspense now as far as, whether it's going to happen or not. So anyway, Rangers going to be back in action on Wednesday against the Canucks at 10 p.m., then Friday at the Oilers at 9, and then Saturday at the Flames at 10. So we're going to be staying up late for those games. Your guess is as good as mine if Kravtsov is still going to be a member of this Ranger team. If he'll actually play in 1 or 2 of these games, we shall see. But a lot of twists and turns so far in the Kravtsov saga, and the grand finale still awaits us, whether Kravtsov gets traded before the deadline or whether he's still on this team. We'll see how that all shakes out. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.